We're just going to give it a few minutes for everyone to come in, and then we'll get started. You're just popping on now. We're just going to give it a minute or two for everyone to join, and then we'll get started. We'll get started in 1 minute, 6:05. All right, welcome everyone to our Honors Next Steps webinar. This is the first of 2, possibly 3 webinars that we will be doing this month. My name is Jackie Coppell. I am the Associate Dean of the Honors College. I am also an Honors alum. And sorry, our phone was ringing. And tonight's webinar is focused on housing and student accessibility services. And I want to kind of some housekeeping before we get started and we introduce our guests. We're going to be using the Q&A feature today. So if you have any questions for any of our guests tonight, please put it in the Q&A, and we're going to make sure we answer those as we go and after each presentation as well. As I said, this presentation tonight is on housing and student accessibility services. Anything else related to honors, we are going to do at Friday's webinar at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's going to be orientation, welcome week, first year schedules, transfer credits, all things honors and advising and all of that. So if you can leave all of those questions for Friday, we will answer them on Friday. And if you wind up not being able to make Friday, we'll answer them via email. But tonight's just focusing on housing and student accessibility services. And we have the whole team here from Honors as well, and they may introduce themselves at the end. We want to give the most time to our guests. So with that being said, and we are recording this session as well, and we're going to put this on our Honors YouTube channel as a private link, and you will be emailed that next week after we do the second webinar. You'll get an email with both webinar links for the recording in case you have to step out or miss something or want to hear something on replay. So I want to turn it over to our guests for them to introduce ourselves. Patrick, I'll have you start.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for being here tonight. My name is Patrick Roger Gordon. I'm an Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs, specifically overseeing housing, and I oversee housing, the business of housing on both of our campuses. With me is my colleague and Assistant Director, Joy. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Joy Cadilla. I am the Assistant Director for Housing Operations, and my responsibilities are housing assignments, onboarding you all, helping you out, figure out the housing process and all that. So yeah, hi, welcome.
And we'll hand over to Student Accessibility Services for them to introduce themselves first, and before we go to the housing presentation. So Elise.
Hi. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. We love having this opportunity to talk with you, and it's just kind of the start of the conversation. So, there'll be some information we give you tonight, some time for Q&A, but also we'll give you our contact info so you can ask us questions, one-on-one. But Student Accessibility Services is the office that students work with if they've had any form of accommodations in the past, if they had an IEP or a 504 plan, or need any kind of specialized supports related to a documented disability, then you will work with myself and with Andrea to put those accommodations in place. They don't automatically transfer from high school, so we'll talk about that. But I am the director of student accessibility services for the 3 campuses, and I've been here for almost 29 years. So I'm a pretty good source of info for parents at this point. And I'll introduce you to Andrea, who's my just
Hi, my name
best
is
right-hand
Andrea.
person.
My name is Andrea Williams. I am the almost said coordinator, assistant director for student accessibility services, New York City campus. And pretty much I'm here as well to support our students that come to our office for the accommodations process, also ensuring students are intakes, documentation, and advocating on their behalf as well, and along with other staff members under me as well. And welcome.
Thank you. Patrick, I'll hand it over to you and Joy.
All right, so we're going to get started. We have a fairly brief presentation. We're going to walk through some of the steps about housing. Making sure I get a thumbs up from my colleagues that we got the right presentation. Jackie? All right, good news. All right, so first and foremost, we want to just talk about where students live. On the New York City campus, we have 4 buildings, 2 for first-year students, 2 for upper-class students. First-year students primarily going to be living exclusively are going to be living in 182 Broadway and Maria's Tower. 182 Broadway is mostly doubles and triples. There are a few quads, and when I say it's mostly doubles and triples, it's mostly triples. Just the math is this. There are 12 rooms on the floor. 1's the RA room, 2 are doubles. The rest of them are triples or quads. So if you're in 182 Broadway, you are most likely going to be in a triple room. Those are all rooms with an ensuite bathroom, so you'd only share your bathroom with those students that are assigned to your room. In Maria's Tower, it is almost exclusively doubles. There's a small number of singles, primarily taken up by our upper-class students on the top floor, and some for our medical accommodations. But there are shared bathrooms on each floor. They're not ensuite, but they're single-use bathrooms. What that means is you can imagine like the gym, a gym style bathroom. You walk in and there's shower stalls and the toilets and sinks. That's how it used to be. This building has just been renovated, and so all of those have been converted to single use. So there's, I believe, 6 bathrooms per floor. When you're there, you're the only one using that space. They are cleaned at least twice a day by our facility staff. And that and a number of other things have really made that a really nice building to live in with this renovation. So we're looking forward to reopening that building this year. Upper class students can live in 33 Beekman, which is mostly double rooms. There's a couple triples. All of those have ensuite bathrooms. 15 Beekman is mostly larger suites between 7 and 10 students. There's a common living area with multiple bedrooms around that and multiple bathrooms that are ensuite for the students that live in those suites. Again, those 2 buildings almost exclusively upper class students. In Pleasantville, we have first-year students all live in Alumni Hall. That is mostly 5-person suites, a double room and a triple room in a unit that has an ensuite bathroom for those students. Just important to note, the bathrooms there are split up. What that means is there's one room that's a shower, one room that's the toilet, and then sinks are in the sort of common space. So it's not like all 5 are having to battle for access to, in the morning to that space. It's well divided and it's very easy to use the space. Our upper class students live in Elm, which is very similar in layout to Alumni, mostly 5-person suites with doubles and triples. North and Martin halls are mostly double rooms, but they have community, shared bathrooms, those sort of traditional dormitory style bathrooms down the hall. And then in the townhouses, those are units for 8 students that have 2 bathrooms and a full kitchen and living room. Again, all of those are for upper class students. Some things to keep in mind: a lot of the townhouses are reserved by the fraternity and sorority life students. They have their own houses. There's also townhouses that a lot of the members of certain teams get to live together. So we have a room selection process for returning students on both campuses that really lets returning students, assuming they apply early enough and on time and partner with match with the roommates, really have a lot of control over where they live as upper class students. We do guarantee housing all 4 years to students as long as they meet the housing deposit deadline, which is May 1st. As long as you complete your application and deposit as a returning student by May 1st, you will be guaranteed housing for the entire time you're here. If, however, you're out, you miss housing and you're not guaranteed housing, it is a little bit difficult to get back in. So we certainly encourage people to always continue to apply for housing if they believe they're going to need it for the next year. So very briefly, what's in a room? We know a lot of people are thinking about this, and the reality is it's pretty much what you would expect. Every room comes with a bed. For each student has a bed with a mattress, a desk, or what's what we call a tablet desk. In some of the triples in Alumni Hall, there's something called a tablet desk, which is essentially a platform on wheels that slides under the bed. It can slide out of the way. It lets you work and have your tablet and computer, but yeah, obviously not take up as much space as if we had additional desks, full desks in those rooms. Everyone gets a chest of drawers. Most often they fit under the bed, but in some cases they're off to the side. And everyone gets a wardrobe or a closet. Residents are going to need to provide their own shower curtain and toilet paper, except in those buildings with community bathrooms. So that would be Maria's Tower on the New York City campus. And for upper class students, it would be Martin and North in Pleasantville. I'm not sure how many of our students here today that applies to. But it's one of those things, it's one of many things we really suggest you take time to talk to your roommates about before you buy a lot of, if all 4 residents of a suite buy a shower curtain that they're just really excited about having, because they're going to make their bathroom, that's going to be a challenge. So we really think that you all should think about talking to each other before you start making some of those purchases that will affect everyone in the room. Some things we want you to know tomorrow. Well, let me say the first part of our process is submitting a housing deposit. I'm assuming most of you have already done that. The deadline was May 1st, although we are still accepting deposits for students who wish to live on campus and still guaranteeing on-campus housing to new incoming first-year and transfer students. The next step is to apply. The application will actually go live tomorrow. So everyone who has submitted a deposit already, tomorrow you'll get what we call the May housing email, very creatively named as the first and big email that we send in May. It will have instructions about the application process. And it'll also have a complete timeline of what to expect throughout the course of the summer. There will be a lot of homework we ask you to do during the summer. Some of those include beyond application, the housing agreement, which is kind of like your lease. It goes into a lot of detail about the requirements of living on campus, the rules, mostly the administrative policies, but it tells you also what university policies you're responsible for abiding by. Next is the pre-assignment form. I want to be clear, housing agreement will go live in June. The pre-assignment form will also go live in June, and that form is really a very basic form. It has you sign off a confirmation of certain information that we want to make sure you know. For example, we try to tell you very early, when will the fall semester open? When will it close? When will the spring semester open? When will it close? So you can start making plans. And so you don't have to come to me at December 21st on move out day and say, actually, I'm not flying out until Christmas Day. We need people to make sure that they're making their plans ahead so that they can be out by the time the residence halls close. The more important thing that pre-assignment form does is it tells us you are done with the roommate matching process. About the time you start to apply, you can begin looking for roommates. The actual application itself collects information about roommates, and it has actually the place where you will go to match for roommates. You can revisit that application as often as you want to continue to look for roommates. You don't have to book your roommates the first time you fill out that application. But it's important that we know from you when you're done. So once you're done and you formed your double, your 2 people for a double, your 3 people for a triple, your 5 people for a suite, we know that your group is fully formed and we can assign you. Because what we really want to do is assign you and let you know what building, what room, what roommates you're going to be with as soon as possible. Because we know it's really great for you to be able to start that conversation about what the year is going to be like. Then closer to move-in, we have something called the move-in ready form. You can think of this as a virtual check-in you might do for a hotel, right? This is the last set of information we need you to sign off on before you can start to select a move-in time. And after the move-in ready form becomes available, there's also something called account clearance. This is not within housing, it's obviously with student accounts, but your account does need to be in good standing. You need to be fully registered. The accounts office will notify us of your status. And as long as they have cleared you for move-in, you can do that final step, which is happening in middle of August or a little bit later, where you select your actual move-in appointment. Everyone does have to pick a move-in appointment. You cannot just show up on move-in days. We have to know when you're coming. And we also have to know that you've completed all these requirements. So you can't select a move-in appointment until you've done all of these other things. And that helps make sure that we're not assigning someone to a room if they're no longer coming to PACE. And certainly make sure that we've had students complete all of those requirements that compliance requirements we have for them signing their agreement, being in good standing, et cetera, before they move into the residence halls. So briefly, I'm going to show you a picture of our housing portal. I'm sorry if it's a little small. We are moving to a new housing portal for our students, and it's called StarRez. This portal has a name called Portal X, but we just refer to it as the housing portal. So when you log in, you'll see something very similar to this. At the top, you will see initially the housing placement application. That's the first requirement that you have, the first homework we have for you from this point forward. But everything else that we have for you, as they become available, they will become available up top. So you'll see the housing agreement eventually, you'll see the pre-assignment form eventually, and then eventually you will see that move-in ready form. Someplace in this portal is also where eventually in August you'll come to pick a move-in time. And then as a student, it will have a lot of other things that you do. We have all sorts of applications, forms you can fill out during the summer. If you want to stay late or you want to apply for winter housing, those kinds of things will all be available through this portal. Just as a note, you'll see this has some weird NYC FY test. That's a person's name. This is a test subject's name. In your homepage in the portal, you'll see your information there. And it'll have your personal U number as well. So the last thing I'm going to say before I pass off to Joy is just about how we do roommate matching and placement for honor students. And just briefly, I want to say, remember that honor students will all be placed together on the same floors. And that means there will be some floors in 182 Broadway. There will be some floors in Maria's Tower. We want to make sure that you have the best possible experience. We know that some people enter that very excited, and we're thrilled about that. To make sure that you're with your cohort of other honor students is what some of you are looking for. Some of you might find that a little restrictive and may have thought about living with some other students. I can certainly let Dr. Capel speak to that at a different time with a little more detail. But I want to tell you, I've been doing this here 20 years. That we know that our students have an exceptional experience. Our honor students in particular, when they live together and they have the opportunity to build a strong cohort, they're going through a very challenging academic experience together. Sometimes some of their peers may understand that, but sometimes some of their non-honors peers may not. And the reality is that the both anecdotal and the quantitative research shows that our students in the honors program do a lot better and have a lot greater satisfaction when we do this. As an upper class student, after your first year, you can continue to stay in housing and match with other students. But you should expect that in your first year, you will be placed on one of the honors floors. In the application, you can indicate a preference between the two buildings. We will do our best to honor that, but remember, this is a finite resource, so there will be a point where we run out. And we will be placing you on those honors floors primarily based on the date of your housing deposit. There are some other factors. For example, if we get a group of 5 people who complete all of the forms and tell us that they're fully matched, we're going to place those students. So there's a little bit of your deposit date is influencing this, and a little bit about how quickly you can make sure those matches are done and complete that pre-assignment form so we can get you in the housing you want. It's really important, though, that I drive home this point. When we match you with roommates and we place you in a room, whether when you match yourself with roommates, you should have a conversation and make sure the students you're matching with are honor students. At the time we start to make assignments, any students that are honors with non-honors matches, they will be canceled. So we will pull apart that match. We will work with Dr. Capel and the rest of the honors team to place you with other honors students. But in order to make sure everyone is on the same page and that there's no hurt feelings later, we really strongly encourage you to make sure that you know that whoever you're matching with is an honors student. So the next thing we're going to talk about is just about what the experience and the expectations are of living on a college campus. And I'm going to ask Joy if she wants to pick up from here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. All right. So preparing to live in a community and on campus. So, for many of you, this may be your first time living away from home. So we wanted to set some expectations for you all that we have for our residents. So obviously actively seeking to get along with other members of the university, valuing the differences of others, pursuing compromise in the face of conflict, and working to de-escalate conflict when it occurs. And so, obviously we have staff that will be there to help navigate any issues you may face. And also maintaining realistic expectations, not expecting 100% comfort 100% of the time. That is just an expectation we wanted to put out there also, such as life. And then just accepting, we do have a room change request process. It opens 2 weeks after the semester begins. But, sometimes those room changes may be delayed, or we may not be able to make it happen depending on the space that you are looking for. So we just wanted to put that expectation out there for you, that while we do accept them, sometimes we just can't accommodate all of them. All right. And so also, in our halls, we believe that you're not just coming there to study and sleep, and then that's kind of it. Living in our halls, you're going to create a life for yourself in there, and you're going to learn a lot of critical life skills, personal and interpersonal skills that we hope you'll take away with you when you graduate. And so these are some of the skills that we've highlighted, resiliency, critical thinking, cultural competence, patience, understanding others. Our goal is that, while you're here at PACE, you're picking up these skills, and you're having also somebody, our staff, guide you through these moments. So we just wanted to let you know that, we just believe that our halls are also a place that you're just going to learn a lot. All right, so let's talk about move-in. So when exactly is Residence Hall move-in? So for our New York City students, they primarily move in August 29th and 30th. And for Pleasantville, primarily will arrive on August 30th. Students will be required to select a move-in time. However, there are exceptions, such as all of you. As you see, honor students, PACE Academy athletes, which I saw some questions from some athletes. And so anyone arriving early, you'll receive directions regarding on how to register for a move-in time, and how and where and when to move in. And so, the emails that our office will send are very generalized to all our students. So any students that are coming for honors, or athletes, or any of those groups that arrive early, your program will also be communicating with you when to move in. And then our office will also work with them to make sure that your portal and, all your stuff is ready for you when you come during your early move-in date.
Yeah, I'm going to butt in and just say I apologize. I really should have changed this, although it is good to make sure you all understand the distinction. Most of our communication will include this top section. It will say, these are the move-in dates. Obviously, as honor students, that will not apply to you. Your move-in date, and confirm this for me, Dr. Capel, is the 26th. August 26th should be the day you will plan on moving in. We will be ready for you. We will assign those times to you based on the information who's assigned to the honors floors. We will make sure those move-in times are available to you for you to select your move-in times from the correct date. But this is a source often of confusion of, I read this, but somebody else told me that. We're telling you that is the reality, that the dual reality we live in. Some students will be moving on the 29th and the 30th. You all move in earlier, but since this messaging goes out to 1,600 new incoming students, and there's going to be a couple hundred of you, we're just making sure you understand that this move-in date is an exception for you. So please jot down August 26th as the date you should plan to arrive. And if you have to make specific plans, I would plan to arrive sometime between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. That's the target window for people to move into their residence halls.
Just to interrupt, sorry, Patrick. It's the 26th in New York City and the 27th in Pleasantville.
Very sorry. I'm seeing someone's question about that exactly, and I apologize again. 26th in New York City, 27th in
7th in
Pleasantville.
Pleasantville. And I put you all should see that in the chat, and that was in my emails to you. As Patrick and Joy just said, all general communications from them will have the general dates. I have sent, I think, more than one email at this point with the specific dates, and we'll continue to send the specific honors dates.
I'm going to answer one other quick one before I hand it back over to Joy. Yes, there are several honors athletes. Some of them are fall sports athletes, and they will move in early. If you're a baseball honors athlete, you're not moving in early because your sport doesn't start for a long time. But if you are football, for example, you might move in early. So you would basically be moving in whatever the earliest date is for whatever qualifies you for early move in. And then I believe that if you're coming early for the sports camp, you'll transition into the honors program as soon as that's available. So I mean the honors pre-fall experience. So moving on, Joy is going to talk a little bit about packing.
Yeah. First, you have plenty of time. You have till August. You have enough time. Please no U-Hauls or box trucks. If you feel that you need a U-Haul or a box truck to pack all your belongings, you may be bringing a lot of stuff that will probably not fit in the room. Please keep in mind that you are moving into spaces that you'll be sharing with others. So please obviously limit the amount of stuff that you bring. We advise that you put everything in closed and sealable boxes and bins. I always say once you seal it up, put your name and your room number all over the boxes. Just so we know whose box it is, just in case it strays away from you for some reason during move-in day. Consider bringing a hand truck or wagon. We do have move-in bins that we provide at each of our buildings. However, we only have so many. And so if you want to get a jump start on moving stuff in while waiting for a bin, you are more than welcome to bring a hand truck or wagon. And then consider mailing items to campus or order them to arrive at campus. So we do have stores close to each campus. There's Target and Home Goods, TJ Maxx, and stores that in New York City are walkable. And then in Pleasantville, if you have, a vehicle, you can go drive over there and pick some items up. But we also have USPS, UPS, FedEx, Amazon. Everybody delivers to our campuses. So you are able to also order things. I tell students, bring your essentials for the first 2 weeks and then kind of build from there what you want or what you need for your room. You don't want to overpack and then end up, not using everything that you've brought. And so, yeah, that too, if you wanted to mail items from home, if you're somebody that isn't from the area and you want to mail items, you can also do that. We advise that you do not do that until closer to your move-in day. So just to kind of put that out there. And then checking our website for more information about what to bring and what not to bring. We do address this in orientation. The list is subject to change. It's not comprehensive, and those details will be in our July or August email.
All right. Well, thanks, Joy, for that. And that brings us our last question. We're actually not going to open up for questions broadly, verbally here. We're going to hand over to our partners at SAS, but you can continue to put housing questions in the Q&A. We suggest that you take a snapshot of this information. The housing address for emails is Housing and Paste ID. If there's a question that needs to be answered that we didn't answer today, you can email that email address, and we will make sure that it gets to the right person for the right answer. And those 3 links are some short, quick links that will help get you to some of the information that will help you begin to plan for your arrival. One of the important links there, it talks about what to bring and what not to bring, and it's posed as what most students bring, what students really, we suggest you talk to your roommates and suite mates before you bring, and what's prohibited. And I just point that out because that and the link to something called the Guide to Residence Living, which is the policy manual for students who live in housing, those will be finalized by June 1st. So just a little bit of grace to until we finalize those. Very unlikely there'll be significant changes, but the rest of the information on those pages is accurate for move-in. So thank you for your attention. Thanks for your questions. I will continue to answer as best I can or need to. And Jackie, back to you.
Great. Thank you, Patrick and Joy. We're gonna talk more about if you answer some housing questions verbally after the Students Accessibility Services presentation. Before they get started, I will say you may be thinking this does not apply to me. I don't need an accommodation, but I think you'd be surprised. It is not just academic accommodations, it is also housing accommodations. Many of you asked in the questions about singles and things like that. If you have, it's also food allergies. If you have that, I am a person that has a ton of food allergies. I would be, if I was a student now, I would need an accommodation. So it's actually a lot broader than I think a lot of you might expect. And you may not feel like you might need it now, but you may need it during your time here. I will say I'm going to be putting 3 links in the chat, and I'll be sharing my screen after Student Accessibility Services goes, for videos for housing that our students have made, that you can hear more about what the housing experience is like from our students and living with other honors students, including athletes, and their experience living in honors housing. And we have, for New York City, a spot to start introducing yourself and find a roommate. We have to build one for Pleasantville, which we will be doing shortly, but I'll put those links in the chat. But I will hand it over to Student Accessibility Services.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And we're going to kind of do similar to housing. We're going to go over just some like details with you. Some of this, again, you might not feel like it's relevant to your student, but I think to Dr. Hubble's point, like there's a lot more here than you realize, because this is different than high school. So we're going to talk about that, but we just want to make clear from the very beginning that the mission of our office is to ensure that every student has equal access to an education in our programs here at PACE. So that can mean a variety of different things, but we're going to talk a little bit about the law to start, just for those of you who may not be fully familiar. And I'm going to read a little bit of it, just because I want to make sure we cover all the content, but also we'll jump in and we'll chat and then we'll do Q&A afterwards. So we do like to point out that like 1 in 5 Americans is a person with a disability, and sometimes that shocks people. Maybe it wouldn't shock you. We were actually recently interviewed by the New York Times because PACE has such a strong, robust program here, and they're like, "Wow, you have high numbers." I'm like, "Yes, all colleges do right now." That's because 1 in 5 people actually are at least even willing to admit that they have documented disabilities. So that makes them the largest minority group in the country. The legal definition of a disability is a physical or mental impairment that limits a person's ability to perform major life activities, basic activities that most people can do without difficulty, right? The definition is used in federal disability, non-discrimination laws, such as the ADA, which is what we're most familiar with. At PACE, this number has gone up. We had 3,000 registered students, I believe it was last year. We've gone up to almost, over the last, actually, this is about 2 years old, almost 4,000 students across campuses. So we have a really large number, and that's a wonderful thing. And that means we're doing our job. There was a 448% increase students registered since 2017. And students with disabilities just widely growing across every single university, because all of our colleagues we talk to are seeing the same thing, which means more and more students are being able to have access to an education, which is awesome. It's a part of life. Some disabilities start when people are born. Some people develop them over time. It doesn't matter. We're here to support them from whichever stage they come. What do? Well, our main goal is, again, to uphold disability and accessibility laws. We are here to maintain compliance, but as you see during the discussion, we're more than that. But first and foremost, very base level, we're here to ensure that all students, again, have equal access, that we're overseen by the ADA, Section 504, other state and local laws, which you probably have heard about in high school. And compliance may involve working with faculty and staff to ensure that a student's accommodations are being upheld in the classroom, in the residence halls, at events, things like that. We support our students with disabilities through equal access. We provide qualified students with appropriate accommodations that focus on reducing the limitations caused by the disability, commonly referred to, and this is, I think, a term that everyone knows, like leveling the playing field. We just want to make it equal. This is there's been a lot of conversation about this right now in higher education. Like, is this giving special, treatment? No, this is about making it fair. We work with students to understand their barriers and eliminate or find alternatives to those barriers whenever possible. We get very creative. Andrea and I are on multiple committees together where we work with students to be like, what can we do here? Let's problem solve. And we
Yes, do.
encourage students to solve. Yeah, that's really our model. We're a good team.
Yeah. Sometimes things come unexpectedly, and myself, Elise, and additional SAS staff, we are all professionally trained in this background. So we do our best. Whatever comes our way, we're able to professionally address it. And we
Yeah.
are here to support our students.
Yep. Types of disabilities, I think this is important too, because sometimes people don't realize things would be considered a disability that could be accommodated. So physical disabilities, mobility, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, visual impairments, auditory impairments, hearing impairments, chronic health conditions, autoimmune disorders, sickle cell, Crohn's disease, diabetes, severe allergies, neurocognitive disabilities, things like ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, Tourette's, learning differences, psychiatric disabilities, generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, just to name a few. These are just giving you kind of like snapshots because again, we work with students with any variety of needs.
Elise, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Someone has asked in the chat if we could click the present button so it shows a little bit larger in the screens.
Sure.
It's the very bottom, the little thing that looks like a projector screen that on your presentation itself.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Wait a minute. I'm not tech savvy. Okay.
That's okay. It'll just make it a little more readable for folks that are.
Okay, looks like a what now?
If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see give feedback to Microsoft Notes in the middle. Go over to your right, about 4 icons. It looks like a little projector screen. It's just to the right of the 4 boxes.
Oh, okay, on the side. Okay.
No,
No,
on the
at
very
the bottom.
bottom.
Next to the red dot. To the left of the red dot at the bottom.
To the left of the red dot.
Okay, the left of the red. Okay, so wait a minute. I'm not tech savvy. I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
Okay.
That's why we talk too. So we have it coming at you in two capacities.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay.
Bottom right, you'll see a red dot.
Oh, I'm on the left side. Okay.
And then to the just a little over to the past the red dot, you'll see it looks like a little square projector.
Those little minus, like a plus sign or something.
No, to the left, the further on the left-hand side. And you're
Okay,
also in drawing mode. This might not be, we might not be able to get this done. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't
want to hold up the presentation.
Yeah,
I just thought it might help. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're good. You're good.
And again, we can always share this information also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely come to our office. We do encourage people. Okay, now oh my God.
We're good.
Okay, here we go. Okay,
there we go.
All right, so where were we? Okay, here we go. All right.
Yep, we're all set. And again, it just should be noted as far as types of disabilities, most of our students who come to work with us have more than one diagnosis. So it may be that they had a learning difference that was diagnosed in high school, but also maybe some struggles around ADHD and attention. ADHD and anxiety often go hands in hand. So it's oftentimes students are coming to us with multiple diagnoses, and we're working with them at addressing each of those needs. Again, while we see all different forms of diagnoses and disabilities and differences at PACE, the most common that we see, and it is about 90%, are those who are hidden or invisible disabilities. So those are the ones that, are not the, readily obvious to a student's professor. And it's really important that students work with us, particularly if they have a hidden disability or a visible disability. These things include learning differences, ADHD, again, autism spectrum, chronic medical conditions, and mental health diagnoses. And I will note again that the largest growing group of students who are registering with our type of office at universities across the country are registering with mental health diagnoses. And I think that's really important. And I think that's something that we're seeing kind of coming out of the experiences that the students have had over the last several years, the pandemic and things like that. But we're very, very well versed. A lot of us have backgrounds in psychology.
And we encourage you to come to us. Like, don't we don't turn any students away. We definitely encourage you to come to our office. That's why we emphasize that it is a student-led process. That's why we do have the intake process as well, which we'll get to that. But we do encourage students, even if you're not sure if your diagnosis will be classified as a disability, we encourage you to come to our office because we most certainly can explore that with you, look at any information you share and supportive documentation. But we'll get to that. I'm going ahead.
Types of accommodations, excuse me. This is a popular one because a lot of times
Yes.
parents are like, well, what? Students are like, well, what can I get? And what we really do, for example, if a student has a learning difference and they had an IEP in high school, what we're going to do is we're going to work off of that IEP and the recommendations and see what can be implemented in the college setting. But the types of accommodations, again, that are really here to lessen the impact of the disability are the most common ones are things like testing. And this is a big one that people request all the time, extra time for testing, distraction-reduced testing environment, use of a computer for exams, use of a text reader. In classrooms, note-taker services is a really big one. Permission to take breaks during class, extensions for assignments, which I have mixed feelings about that one, but I would talk to your student about that and you about that individually. Leniency with or flexibility with attendance policy and or absences, and accessible, of course, classroom locations. Your student needs to be able to comfortably and safely get to their classroom. In housing, as was touched upon briefly before, things like a single room, no more than one roommate, a single use or private bathroom, emotional support animal. And then meal plans, which was also touched upon, that's something that goes through our office now too, which if a student has, for example, severe food allergies and it's not possible for them to safely eat in the residence hall, then we may be able to, waive the meal plan or modify the meal plan. We work very hard to create a safe space in the residence hall for all of our students, but we know there are unique situations where a student might not be able to utilize their meal plans. They work with us on that.
And I just would like to add because I know, just so everyone's aware, housing has a deadline. We don't have a set deadline for when you can request or register with our office for any academic housing or meal plan accommodations. So please keep in mind, if you're looking for housing accommodation, we're not going to tell you, sorry, you missed a deadline. You can come to us the middle of the school year, which I would 100% strongly recommend in general with accommodations. If you are in need, definitely, if you know you're a student that you need academic, housing, meal plan, etc., the best practice is to start now reaching out to our office, start, the process prior to starting the fall semester, so that this way you're not waiting once you done took midterms and you realize, oh my God, I failed that midterm, I need accommodations. No, we encourage you the start of the school year. If you know you had accommodations in high school, you needed more extra time on exams, most likely you're going to need it in higher ed. So we encourage you, please, please, please come to us prior before the start of the semester.
Yes, but to Andrea's point also, we don't have a cutoff. So you could, if a student decides that they want to try to go cold turkey, for that first semester and not use their accommodations, that's well within their rights to make that decision. But again, if after midterms they're like, should have registered for that extra time, you can still do it then. There's no, but accommodations are not retroactive, and that's important to note too. So any tests that had been previously taken without the extra time, we can't have the student retake with their extra time. But again, there's no penalty for that. We just like you to do it before the semester starts so we can make sure to have everything in place. And again, with housing, that's really important because when we're out of rooms, we're out of rooms. And, all we can do at that point is then do a wait list. As far as
we do consultation, and we do, if you prior to requesting accommodations, again, it's a student-led process. So we do encourage parents, if you know your student, your child may need a support with speaking with us or expressing what they want to share with us, we do encourage you to, support them, advocate on their behalf along with them. But it is a student-led process. So typically our communication will be with the student. And also, if you're just looking to learn more about the process, we do consultation as well. So definitely you can follow up with our office. and schedule time to either meet with myself, or I can assign another team member, just so that we can, individually go over with the process, what that looks like and what's required and needed.
Yeah, and that could be helpful as first step. Because once, to Andrea's point, once a student knows, okay, I want to start this process, it is student-led, which means the student needs to reach out to us and make the appointment. If they are under the age of 18, parents, family can help them schedule that appointment, but it is the student that must initiate it. We do encourage actually parents or family, or if the student has someone in their life that's been helping them navigate the accommodations process. If they want to join us for that first intake meeting, great. That's really up to you all, like what you feel is best for your student and in your family, what you're comfortable with. That's great. Fine by us, because oftentimes that first meeting can be a little intimidating, right? We're asking questions about what kind of services did you get in the past? What are you looking for here? Sometimes students really don't know the answers. And so sometimes a family member could be like, well, I know the answer to that one. But students need to come forward. They need to request accommodations. If students don't come to us to request accommodations, even if we have a professor reach out and say, hey, I have the student in my class who's really struggling. They said they have accommodations in the past. Can you reach out to them? No, we're not allowed to, actually. It's a confidentiality thing. But then we'll guide the professor to say, hey, there's resources here. You mentioned to me, there's that you've had accommodations in the past. There's this SIS office. Here's their contact info. And then they connect them with us. But so you need to make an intake appointment. And again, we can do that virtually. We can do that in person. During the summertime, I know sometimes it can be easier for families to do it virtually, and that's totally fine. We can do it over Zoom. We need to get documentation. The type of documentation is really dependent upon the nature of the diagnosis. So that's something we could talk about, one-on-one over email or over the phone. But we generally, again, if, for example, for a learning difference or a learning disability, that's generally the student's IEP or 504 plan, and then their most recent psychoeducational or neuropsychological evaluation, which is done through the high school, usually. At the appointment, again, we'll talk about kind of the history of accommodations, what the student needs, how it works here. And then once we gather all of that, we meet as a team and we review the requests and determine what we feel is most appropriate. And then all students really need to do is, follow the very simple steps of alerting their faculty, and we walk them through everything. We give it to them in writing, we talk to them, and again, we don't leave them hanging, because we know, especially that first semester, it's tricky.
And we don't decide what accommodations that works best for you. We want to hear from, but we will try to make recommendations. If you say, well, I have a hard time completing notes or following lectures, we may, make some suggestions, but it is a student-led. So we want to hear from you as a student, what you think works best for you.
Yeah. And we try to work with students also around the concept of documentation, because we know that it's not always easy to get documentation. And so we have something called provisional accommodations. And those are accommodations that maybe the student just has an IEP. And the school can't find their testing. They don't have their most recent evaluation, but we have an IEP that says, okay, the student received these supports in high school. So then what we would do is we provide those provisionally or temporarily for a semester to give you time to find the new documentation. We work with you to brainstorm how to get the documentation. We have some good resources locally, but we do recognize that sometimes it's tricky to get documentation, especially if if a diagnosis is new. That could be hard. So we really brainstorm and be like, okay, let's see, what can we do here? And what can we provide, even if it's just for a semester, to get you going until you can get the rest of the information that you need. If an accommodation is not approved for some reason, we like to mention this only because we don't want students to feel like, just disheartened if for some reason we come back and say, we can't maybe do, for example, a single room quite yet, but we can do a double, for example. If the student feels like that's not enough for me, I really do need the single room, then they can do a couple different things. One is they can meet with us and discuss, well, what other documentation might be needed. Again, documentation is a big thing. So what other documentation may be needed? We will brainstorm again with you. just keeping in communication, that's the biggest thing. But if a student feels like, okay, I provided all I can provide, or if a family member feels like that, then they can also file an appeal. And that goes to at the email on there, the sasappeals@pace.edu. And it's very rare, but we just like students to know that they have the ability and they have the right to appeal if they don't agree. That's, I think, really an important message, because we're really trying to empower students with this too. As far as wait times, we don't want there to be wait times, but from July to September, it's happened. We'll say that. Our
Yes,
numbers
it's
are
very-
only going up. So,
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
so if you're reaching out over the summer, there's oftentimes like a 1 to 2 week wait time for an intake. We say 4 to 6 weeks for our housing determination, just because there's a number of steps in that process. We always try to make this less, but we're just trying to like put out there, like, this is a possibility. So please plan accordingly, because what we don't want is for it to be a surprise for you all. But we always try to, I mean, if we can turn something over in a day, that's what we want to do.
Yes. And I
we
would
just-
just like to add to, I'm sorry, Elise, I would like to just add to that, because sometimes, parents will reach out to our office like, hey, can I get a status update on my, my son? He went through, he did the intake, his accommodation, just so parents if parents that are on, that you're aware. It is, again, a student-led process. So typically, if it's encouraged and recommended that the student reach out to us. If we don't have a signed release on file, we cannot share that information with you. So in other words, we would reach out to the student to request to sign our release, allowing us to share any information with the parent or guardian. But just so that you're aware, if you reach out to our office in reference to a status update on your child or the student's accommodations, we can't share that information. So we would definitely need to reach out to the student and request and let them know, like, hey, mom reached out to us, they in reference to your accommodations. If you would like us to share information, we ask that you complete a release, just so that you are aware.
That's a good point. And I'm sure you've heard about FERPAs. You'll hear about FERPAs a lot more, the releases, when you come to orientation. We have a different release through our office, but that is an important point. And we talk to families about that when we do the intake, that once your student's 18 and registered with us, we can't talk to you unless they sign a release. But that's a conversation to, again, have as a family, because it can be very helpful for us to be able to speak with you. But we're always going to reach out to your student first. That's,
And
that's the goal.
Once we get that release, it is by appointment. So if you call the office, and I say that because sometimes I will have parents that would like to speak to me at that moment, or any staff person. So if in the event that the student signs a release and you do reach out to our department, those are by appointment only.
So who should reach out to us? What student should reach out to us? Because this is, again, sometimes a big question. If a student had a 504 plan, please reach out to us. An IEP, SAS. If your student went to a private school and maybe they got specialized supports, but never really had an IEP or 504 plan, but would like to explore what they can get in college, please reach out to us, because there's things we can do even if we don't have an IEP. If your student starts to struggle academically and never had services before, but thinks they may have a learning difference, or maybe they were able to get through high school, but now college is harder, so things are popping up, then please have them reach out to us. Same thing for housing accommodations. Maybe they started out and they were like, oh, this will be fine. And then they realize that there's stuff that pops up that is problematic and not functional for them in housing. Then SAS. Same thing with meal plans. And again, to my previous point, parents, faculty, staff, no one can make a student reach out to us or force a student to use accommodations. But we just want to educate our students, like, this is what we're here to help with. And even if you don't know, like, even if you're not sure, just talk to us. And I think you'll find it's a different process than high school in a lot of ways that are really appealing to students. It's a lot more independent. So it requires a little more autonomy, but we're great support. And also it means that the student's in control. A student can say, I want to use my accommodations, but only in these 2 classes and not the other 2. And a really important point, and I apologize we didn't mention this at the beginning, but everything that comes into our office is confidential. So any documentation we receive, the only people who have access to that is SAS, which is very different than high school. And a lot of times it's helpful for students to know that, in high school, anyone could go into a student's chart, any teacher or whatnot. That's not the case in college. Only department that has access to students' documentation is ours. And when we grant an accommodation, if it's for testing or if it's for housing, we do not share why. We do not share the diagnosis. So I do want to end with that. And of course, our contact information, so you know how to reach us. And I'm going to put our website into the chat as well. But thank you for bearing with our lots of nitty-gritty little details.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I know there's a few questions for the Q&A for you guys. I'll start. There's some questions I think we want to do live that we kept seeing over and over again. There's one I want to do. I don't want to actually answer it, but I'm going to ask Student Accessibility Services and Housing to answer because it's a combo question. So let's say I'm a student that wants to apply for a housing accommodation. How does this process, I know how it works, but I'm going to ask you, how does this process work? Do I fill out the room? Do I look for a roommate? Do I fill out the roommate form? Do I fill out housings forms? Do I wait for my accommodation first? What's the order of how I do if I'm applying for a housing accommodation? What's the order of this? And I know it takes both your areas.
I always say this to students when they're doing intakes with us for housing, and they say, well, do I need to complete the housing application? And I always say to them, if you want to have a place to sleep, yes, absolutely. Even if you're requesting accommodation through our office, you still need to, and you are required to go through the housing process. And I'll let Patrick or Joy elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. First of all, you always need to fill out the housing application and the other forms. The only thing that's optional in the information and the tasks we open up to you during the summer is roommate matching. So, you still have to fill out the application, you have to fill out a housing agreement, you have to fill a pre-assignment form, and ultimately a move and ready form, so that you're on board and ready to take the step of selecting a move-in appointment. Now, if you match with a roommate, or if you don't match with a roommate, there is a risk. If you are applying for an accommodation, if you want to make sure you have a certain roommate, if you are denied that accommodation, I would encourage you to match with somebody, but just to be open and honest and transparent. Say, I want you to know there's a chance I'll be placed in a different kind of room, and share as much or as little as you want about that. But I do think it's important for you to be honest that they may be matching with somebody who's not going to be there at the time that we make assignments, because we'll place you in a single room, if that's the accommodated need. But on the other hand, if you're very, very sure you're going to get your accommodation, and there may be folks who are like that. I'm not going to suggest what I think those range of criteria are. But I would suggest that you speak with your provider. You do your best to connect with the folks at SAS as early as you can. If you're very sure, then I would encourage you not to put someone in that position, because you're likely preventing them from being able to match with somebody who would make a good match, and then leaving them in a situation where they will be the one to get a random roommate. So it's one of those probably first big decisions you're gonna have to make that requires a judgment call, for which there is no specific right answer. You're gonna have to go with what you think feels right.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I just want to say also, if you're like a group of 3 or 4 and if one person is trying to do the housing accommodation, and you have an empty bed, we may fill that bed. That bed doesn't stay empty. So I know some groups think, okay, for a group of 3, we're going to wind up in a double if that person gets an accommodation, and we have the right to fill the bed. So just for students in that situation.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That's a very good point.
There's one other one. I know Patrick wants to answer some live as well. There's one other one that combos both areas, which is, let's say you get approved can you get approved for a emotional support or a service animal? And if you do, what happens in terms of housing? Because it is an animal and we don't normally have pets in the dorms. So that's another combo between you guys.
Well, that's it. There's two things to that right in the beginning there, Jacqueline, because there's two different types of animals that you might see on campus. And one is a service animal. And a service animal actually does not go through student accessibility services. A service animal is an animal that is literally trained to provide a specific service. And an example of that would be a dog who is trained to sense for seizures and knows how to assist a student if they're, they smell a seizure coming on, they know to have the student sit down. PTSD, obviously visual impairments. Service animals do not go through our office. That is a separate entity. I will note though, and I think most people know this, but service animals can only be dogs. And in a very, very rare case, which I've not seen in almost 29 years of working in a college, a mini horse. Not easy in a residence hall. Don't recommend that. But it's a thing. Now, emotional support animals, that comes through us. Emotional support animals can be very wonderful source of support, but really important part of a student's treatment plan. But a student does need to be working with a licensed mental health clinician. They cannot just go online and fill out spend $200, the ones you get when you want to fly with your cat. It needs to actually come from somebody working with a clinician who feels that this animal is going to be really helpful for the student's functioning and for them to be successful and happy on campus. And so they do need to work through us. There's same housing accommodations process. We do need documentation on the animal from the veterinarian that the animal's safe to be on campus. We have a bunch of requirements for the dogs, cats, and what's not. And then as far as the housing component, obviously the student needs to make sure that their roommate will be okay living with an ESA. And that's where I think Patrick and Joy come in.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I'm back to what we just talked about. If you're thinking like trying to apply for a single and whether or not you sign up for with a roommate, 100%. If you're looking to, you're seeking approval to have an ESA, you absolutely have to talk to your roommate about that. And we cannot, right? It's not our medical information to share. It is yours. But I can tell you that, roughly speaking, the rules are this: if if the students aren't moved in, if the students are assigned to a space prior to the acknowledgement of that ESA, then all of those roommates are going to have to approve. Which means that if, for example, there's a delay, if you match with 4 roommates and then we assign you to a room and only then you get your SCA approval, if any of those people deny, and say, I can't live with that, I have an allergy, then you are going to have to be placed someplace else with your ESA. We're going to have to find another location where the roommates don't have an allergy or don't have some other objection. Mm-hmm. So the roommates can say, I don't want an environment where an animal is present. Conversely, if you already have a space and you're assigned, and let's say there's a vacancy in your room, if we assign someone to that space and they're not comfortable with the ESA, then we'll find another space for that person. We will let them know there is an ESA present in a room before they move, and we would assign it. So that's roughly how the approval process works. So what that means is the onus really is on you, a student who's seeking to have an ESA, to have a conversation with anybody you want to match with, to make sure they're comfortable, both in theory and physically, so that they are sharing with you whether or not they have an allergy or any other specific physical concerns about having an ESA in their room.
One other quick point about ESAs versus service animals too that I want to mention is sometimes people get confused about where ESAs can come on campus. And so sometimes people think that an ESA, maybe I have an emotional support cat, and that means, if they're allowed to live in my room, that means they can come around campus with me. And that's not the case. Service animals can be anywhere that a student can be because they are a service animal that must be there to protect and provide support to that student. An ESA, an emotional support animal, is allowed to be in the student's residence hall room. They are allowed to be in the common area of the floor of the student's residence hall room if there are no other students who have, medical needs or allergies that would put them at risk. And then they're obviously allowed to be outdoors on leash, but they're not allowed to be in other buildings on campus. They're not allowed to be in the the student centers, the cafeterias, the libraries, the classrooms. ESAs are really for the students' living environment. So I just want to point that out because I know sometimes that's confusing for folks. And so people get on campus, they're like, well, I can bring my dog to class with me, right? Nope. Nope. They can be in the residence hall with you and you can take them for walks and fun stuff like that, but they can't come to class with you.
Great. Thank you for that. Patrick, I know you have live questions. One of them, I think it's a general thing, and I think it's one of the ones we're getting a lot of questions about doubles. And so, can you kind of address like what are the odds of getting a double? Can you specifically ask for a double? If Emma and I want to live together and we only put each other down, does that ensure I get a double? What's the situation on doubles for both
Well,
campuses?
I am not Polymarket or Kalshi, so I'm not going to get into talking about the odds. As I said, Maria's Tower is almost all doubles. If you really want to make sure you have a double, put Maria's Tower as your preference and make sure your roommate does as well, because everyone there is going to get a double. If you really want a double and you put 182 Broadway in as your preference, you're very likely to be disappointed. That's just simply a reality of it. The primary way in which students are prioritized to have a double room is to have applied very early. There is a stipulation for students who submitted their deposit by March 3rd. Those students are all guaranteed a double room, but it doesn't stipulate which building. So even to meet that guarantee, we may place students in Maria's Tower to make sure that they have the double that was promised to them. So the thing I like to say to people is if you want control over agency and you want to be in 182 Broadway, rather than focusing on the double, focus on pairing with 2 other people that you can live with and form a group of 3 people or a group of 4 even, because the quads are the biggest rooms we have on campus. They've got the best views and traditionally the students in those quads report being very, very happy. It just so happens that the quads in that building are at the corner of Broadway and John Street, and they look up Broadway, and from a certain height and above, you can see all the way to the Chrysler Building. So they're good rooms, and they've got a nice view, and they've got the biggest individual living space rooms we have on campus are in the 182 Broadway triples and quads in terms of a space apportioned per student. So people have asked if they only match with one person, are they guaranteed a double? The answer is no. People have asked if they can indicate in the application whether they would prefer a double. The answer is no. The reality is this, that if we offer that option to indicate you want a double, we found out that most people, more people are dissatisfied because we do have mostly triple rooms again in 182 Broadway. This year may be a little different for us because this is the first year we've had Maria's Tower back with all of its double rooms, and that we're probably going to be able to meet more double room preferences for students. But in terms of what students can do from this point forward to increase their chances of getting a double, the first thing is to indicate Maria's Tower as your choice. The other is to complete everything as quickly as possible. And we realize that some of that's on us, right? We're not going to open up the housing agreement and the what's called move-in ready form until June. So you can't even complete that and match with the roommate and tell us you're done so we can place you in a room until that time. But we're going to start doing assignments as soon as people let us know that they're done matching. And those students who have matched with one person and indicated they really want to be in Maria's Tower and in a double room, we're going to start getting them placed in those rooms as soon as we can. I'm going to take liberty to just really quickly answer one other quick question that I saw. I'm sure there are others stacking up, but it was about move-in. I think it's important to say out loud. Our move-in process allows parents to come and go all day long. There will be a time where an announcement is made in the building saying it's time for parents to go home. But on move-in day itself, you don't have to sign in as long as you're with your student helping people move in. Our security is present on both our campuses at the curb. Our staff is present during the entire move-in day. So it's certainly a safe move-in process. But you can move in, I would say, with your students, and you can help them. I would say, on our New York City campus, one of the reasons that on Joyce, when Joy was mentioning it, she said pack concisely, is because you may have to unload on the curb. The typical move-in time, the span from the time you unload to the time that the student is in their room and unpacking their things is between 10 and 20 minutes. It's usually around 15. There can certainly be times that it's a little longer because sometimes at 11 o'clock, the 11 o'clock slot, people from 10 o'clock come late and people from noon come early, and we might see a bottleneck. But in general, our time, and that's why we require students to select a move-in time, is so we know how many people are coming. because our campus is vertical in New York City. There's only so much room in a lobby. There's only so many elevators, and we want to make sure that we're apportioning the access to the rooms appropriately. And we have it down to a pretty good science. That's why there's 2 days of move-in in New York, and we need people to come at their time so we can have that process be steady and effective, and so people aren't waiting for a long period of time. But generally, we advise that somebody, if possible, if you're driving, particularly in New York, 3 people come, the student and 2 others, one to stay with the car and go park it, one to stay with the stuff in case it needs to stay on the sidewalk while the student goes to do something else, and of course the student themselves. So I hope that addresses move-in. Any other questions that are sticking out for housing?
Yeah, a couple, and I think I'll wind up answering some of them. I will say for actually I'll ask you just in case it's changed since we last talked. Students are asking like when do we have to decide our roommate by?
So you don't have to decide your roommate by any time. A roommate matching is optional. It will start with the application, because in the application you'll see there's a place for you to literally start searching for roommates. The email we send tomorrow about this process will strongly advise people not do that. At the start of the process, there's only a small number of people who have filled out the application, so only a small number of people are going to be in that roommate matching pool. We suggest you complete your application and then come back to it in a week or so to start really looking and searching for roommates. So you'll be able to do a search one of 2 ways. You can search by criteria and look for people who are going to bed the same time as you, clean the rooms the same with the same frequency as you, etc. Or you can literally look people up by their PACE username. So if you know somebody, get their PACE username, you can type that in and just match directly with that person. You have to have all roommate matching ends on July 1st. So there's almost 2 full months of opportunity for people to match with their roommates, which should be plenty of time, because while we're continuing to guarantee housing and some new people will come in between now and July, there won't be more than 50 more people added to housing. So most people are in the pool, or will be in the pool once they complete the housing application. As I said, in June, the housing agreement and what we call the pre-assignment form will become available. That is that form that you can formally tell us that you're done matching. You may be done matching with your roommate day after tomorrow, and I understand that, but we're still not going to place you in a room, because we've been doing this a really long time, and lots of students meet other people. They talk to their roommate more, and maybe explore their social media, and maybe realize that it wasn't as great a match as they thought. We want to give people some time to sit with their choices before we actually lock in their placement in a room. And so that's part of the reason. We also want to make sure people have ample time to go through and really search for one another. So we will not lock in and start assigning people to rooms until we open up the housing agreement and the pre-assignment form in June. And while we will start that process, it doesn't mean that on June 1st, if you got your roommate matched and you finish that form, that you will instantly be assigned. This is a process that requires some deliberation and some time on our part. And so we're going to do it right, and we're going to take the time to assign everyone. We don't use auto assign on our campus. We assign every student intentionally, particularly for honor students. We work closely with Dr. Capel and her team to make sure we're making good matches based on the information she has, particularly for those students who have not picked roommates. We want to make sure that we're getting them together with people who we feel and she feels will be good matches. So it is an iterative process, and it is a process that we take our time with.
Yeah, so just because I'm seeing still a lot of questions on it, when it opens on, June 1st, if you have your roommates, you can, and you know who they are and they're in honors, you can go in and put those names in, but you can, as Patrick said, just to reiterate, you can change your mind. And you have about a month or so to do that. We have 2 honors orientations in June, on the city campus and one in Pleasantville in June. You may be attending those orientations and find people that you really click with in person. And you may want to change who you put on June 1st. So we are waiting till everybody sorts all that out, and then we'll go in and make those matches, because we know sometimes online presence and talking to somebody on Zoom is very different than meeting them in person and having a phone call or other things, a more in-depth conversation. So if you know your people, you can put it in, but we will give you time to do that. I will say, kind of talking about roommates for a bit, you need to match buildings with your roommates. So if, for example, if I am, if I want to live with Patrick and Joy, And Patrick and Joy really want to be in 182 Broadway, but I really want to be in Maria's Tower. We've got an issue because somebody's going to be unhappy. You know, if we place the three of us in 182 Broadway, me as the Maria's Tower person is going to be upset because I didn't get my preference. So you really need to talk to your roommates and make sure everybody has the same building preference, so that nobody is unhappy. We last couple of years we've been in 15 Beekman, but prior to that we had two buildings, Maria's Tower and 182 for our freshmen, and we'd have students who would not check with their roommates about what building, and then somebody was always unhappy in the bunch when we assigned a building. So please check with your roommates, double check. You want 182? I want 182. We all want 182, or we all want, or the other person, because it for double. You want Maria's Tower? I want Maria's Tower. Great. That's our first choice. So please, please, please check with that so the buildings match, and have that start be your conversation. Just to reiterate, since we've gotten a lot of questions about honors housing, you do have to, I've put it in all my emails since December or January, you do have to live with an honors roommate for your first year. If you're residing on campus, you must be with honors roommate or roommates for your first year. After that, it is optional. However, the majority of our students do like to stay in honors housing as an upperclassman. It's not required, but they do. So our students have a much better experience with honors housing. That's why we've required this, because if Patrick was talking about that community, the similar interests, the study habits, it's been a richer experience. And I put housing videos in the chat. I'll do it again. You could hear it straight from our students, including our athletes who've lived in honors housing. Mohini, our associate director, lived in honors housing when she was a freshman. She just recently got married. Her maid of honor was her honors random roommate. And so we talk about this. We have students who live, I have a senior who lives off campus who will be out in the real world next year, and in her big girl apartment that she's got is still her freshman honors roommates that she's moving in for the next few years with. And this is what we do, and it's such a great community, and we have found it works. So we're giving you the opportunity. We're gonna have some chats for you to find other people. You can find them at orientation. For our athletes, we got a lot of questions. Joy was answering them with me. You do not have to live with your team. There is no requirement to live with your team. You do not also have to live with other athlete. You can choose to live with a random honors person that is not in athletics. A lot of our athletes actually are initially a little scared by this, and actually then prefer it because you are going to spend practice with your team. You're going to be in games with your team. You're going to travel with your team. You spend a lot of your time with your team. So having a friend group outside of your team is great, but it also means if you want to escape team dynamics for a second or anything, let's say you missed the play and everyone's upset because you lost the game and it was kind of on you. You don't have to go back to your dorm and hear that because your roommate's not on your team and doesn't know that you did that. So it's a chance to escape kind of that. And so a lot of our students actually enjoy that, to have a break. We can match you with your honors teammates if you indicate that to us. We can match you by season. So if you want to be in another match with other honors athletes in the same season as you, so you're all kind of in practice mode and game mode at the same time, or if you just want another honors athlete, or if you were like, I don't want any athlete, and you find your own roommates, or you want random, you could do that too, but it is not required. And I know it's a little scary, but we've had this, and we've had really, really great matches and friendships. We've had a lot of students recently in the last year get married, former students get married to each other that met on the honors floor. So we've had 3 or 4 honors weddings this year from the honors floor. So it is this really great experience, and you have to have a little faith that we know what we're doing after doing this for about 2 decades. There's a method to our madness. Like I said, I will put those links one more time in the chat. The housing videos, one just debuted today. Again, they're made by our students about their honors experiences in housing. And we're going to have on Instagram in New York City, I'll post it one more time, We have a way to kind of talk and chat, post about yourself, to find roommates. It's on Instagram's channel feature. We are trying to get the channel feature to work on our Pleasantville Instagram. And so we'll get back to you on that. Recordings from these sessions are going to be sent out, like I said, next week. And there's a great last question. I think I'll let you, housing, do. I know Joy's answering it, typing. What about gender affirming or gender neutral or housing? How does that work? I think that's a last good question.
I'll answer. So this person's asking about orientation. So that will have orientation housing is done through the orientation staff. So if you have any requests during orientation and staying over, please speak with them. However, in our housing application, when you go to fill it out, there is a question that asks you if you would like to be part of our gender affirming housing. And then if you click yes, there is a second page that asks you, are you absolutely sure? And then we also provide a lot of information on what is gender affirming housing. And so, you know, if you opt into gender affirming housing, you will only see students in the roommate matching pool that have also selected to also join gender affirming housing. And so, you know, this is something that we go through with our students. You know, when they are looking for each other. If you are somebody that selects gender affirming housing, but your requested roommate that you want does not select gender affirming housing, you're not going to find each other. So you both have to make sure that you're talking to one another about what you're speaking on, what you're putting in your application. If you are somebody that is happy with a random roommate but you want to do gender affirming housing, please put yes in the form. If you do not want to do gender affirming housing, please put no. Again, you know, we have it in our application that we ask you twice, and we put all the information there on what gender affirming housing is. So please make sure that you're reading the application thoroughly. But the question that was sent in was regarding orientation. We've had a couple of questions about orientation and housing. So our office does not do the assignments for orientation housing. The orientation staff does during orientation time. So if you need anything regarding orientation housing, please speak with them. If there's someone you want to live with, an accommodation you may have, they are the office you will want to speak to. It's student engagement. Student engagement is the office that does orientation.
Thanks, Joy.
I apologize. I know we're over time. I really have to drive home. Think very carefully about engaging in gender affirming housing. If you take no action, if you say no, you will be assigned to rooms and you'll be able to select roommates based purely on traditional binary gender, which is, we find most of our students want. And that's fine. We respect that choice. If you don't, you will be able to pick, if you choose to opt into gender affirming housing, you'll be able to pick based on, you know, any gender. That restriction will be lifted. But it also means, as Joy said, that we're assuming that you don't mind being placed with someone of an opposite gender. We've gone through this process and it's been refined over a great deal of time. And we've found that a lot of people opt in because they think of themselves as allies. They want to be supportive. Those are laudable and understandable. But we found that many of those students, you know, once finding themselves in that situation, go, actually, this is not what I was hoping for. And that can be very damaging to the people with whom they're assigned. So if it's something that you need, if it's something you want, if it's something that affirms your sense of identity, gender identity, that is what this is for. And we want you to take advantage of it all day long because we want to meet that need for you. But if it's not, if it's just something that you think would be cool, that's definitely not the kind of reason to opt into that process. And we just hope you make really strong choices about that because it's going to help everyone have a great experience.
Thank you. We're gonna just end on saying that again, Friday is our next steps webinar. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is where we're going to be going over your first year schedule and how that kind of works, transfer credits, welcome week, which is the last week of August and involves move-in. It's going to be where we talk about orientation. We're seeing a lot of orientation questions. We're going to talk about honors orientation and how orientation works. We're going to talk about advising, and my honors staff has been here, but it's where you're going to kind of actually hear from our honors advisors. So everything sort of honors, because we handle all that process, is going to be this Friday. And we will be answering all of those questions, and Some of you will be getting, if you submitted your honors questionnaire early, we have been making some schedules. You're going to be getting some schedules. If your schedule's been made, you'll be getting some of those this week. And we will be sending all of that out. Honors questionnaires are due, the second batch, first batch was due May 1st, second batch is due this Friday, and the third batch is due May 15th. Please don't wait, because the sooner you get it in, the better classes we can get you. Like I said, we will be sending out the recording next week of this one on Fridays if you can't make it, but I highly, highly suggest you do. Lots of important information this Friday. Thank you so much to Res Life Housing and to Student Accessibility Services for coming and answering all of your questions. And we will, like I said, we'll be sending this out. And Housing, do you mind putting the general housing email in the chat? So if you have any housing questions, I know Student Accessibility Services already did that, showed theirs as well. And thank you. So I'll let them do that, and we will see you all again on Friday and at orientation. So
Thank
have
you.
a good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.